The silence was the worst part, a thick blanket smothering the rage that threatened to consume me. They stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the dining room, their laughter echoing like nails on a chalkboard, while I was relegated to the cold, damp garage. The injustice of it all, the sheer audacity, was a punch to the gut, a crushing blow that stole the air from my lungs. They thought they had broken me. They were wrong. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people who should love you most, your own family, subscribe now. My name's Emma, and for the past 3 years, I had been the silent benefactor of my family's lavish lifestyle. It wasn't a loan, not exactly. More like an investment, I told myself, an investment in family. My parents, bless their hearts, had always been irresponsible with money. A string of bad business ventures, impulsive purchases, and a general inability to say no had left them drowning in debt. My younger brother Liam wasn't much better, racking up credit card bills faster than he could earn a paycheck. So I stepped in. Fresh out of college, armed with a degree in finance and a burning desire to help, I secretly began funneling a significant portion of my income into their accounts, paying off their mortgages, settling their debts, and ensuring they could maintain the facade of upper-middle-class comfort they so desperately craved. I covered Liam's business expenses, which usually meant the latest gaming console or weekend trips with his friends. I never asked for credit, never demanded repayment. The satisfaction of knowing they were secure, of seeing the stress lines ease from my mother's face, was enough. Thanksgiving had always been a sacred tradition in our family, a time for togetherness, gratitude, and, of course, an obscene amount of food. This year, however, felt different. The air was thick with unspoken tension. A week before the holiday, my mother had called, her voice tight. She danced around the subject, mentioning some family matters that needed to be discussed, hinting at a change in dynamics. I brushed it off, attributing her unease to holiday stress. I should have known better. Arriving at their house on Thanksgiving Day, the aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie doing little to mask the icy atmosphere, I was immediately greeted by my father's stern face. He pulled me aside, his voice low and devoid of warmth. He said there had been some concerns raised about my recent lifestyle choices, and that until I apologized for them, I wouldn't be welcome at the family table. Apologize? For what? I was stunned, confused. My brother Liam stood behind my father, smirking. My mother avoided my gaze, fiddling with her apron. The lifestyle choices they were referring to were my recent engagement to Sarah. My family wasn't exactly known for their open-mindedness, but I'd hoped they would at least be civil. Turns out, their prejudice ran deeper than I imagined.
They ushered me towards the garage, a dark, cavernous space filled with forgotten tools and dusty boxes. "We've set up a place for you to eat," my mother mumbled, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of shame and defiance. "Leftovers," my father added, his voice cold, "in the garage, until you come to your senses." I stood there, paralyzed, as they walked back inside, the door closing with a resounding thud that echoed in the sudden silence. The laughter from the dining room was a cruel symphony, a constant reminder of my exclusion. The betrayal was a physical ache, a sharp, stabbing pain that radiated through my chest. They were banishing me, their financial lifeline, to the garage on Thanksgiving Day because of who I loved. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had assumed I would crumble, apologize, and beg for their acceptance. But in that moment, surrounded by the cold, impersonal clutter of the garage, something inside me shifted. The hurt began to harden, replaced by a cold, steely resolve. The person I trusted most was one of them. My brother, Liam, was the one who had stoked the flames of their disapproval. He'd always been jealous of my success, of my ability to provide for them all. He saw my relationship with Sarah as a threat, a symbol of my independence, and he used their prejudice as a weapon to try and cut me down. I heard him whispering to my parents in the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, planting seeds of doubt and resentment. I should have known. Liam always had a knack for manipulating people, for preying on their insecurities. I just never thought he would turn that venom on me. The anger simmered, a slow burn that threatened to erupt. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would play their game, pretend to be contrite, while secretly plotting my revenge. They had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated me. They had forgotten that the hand that feeds can also starve. The leftovers were cold, congealed gravy clinging to dry turkey slices, the mashed potatoes forming a solid, unappetizing mass. I picked at the food, my appetite gone, each bite a bitter reminder of their rejection. The sounds of laughter and clinking silverware drifted from the dining room, mocking my solitude. I couldn't bring myself to swallow. I wrapped the food back up, placed it in the ancient refrigerator humming loudly in the corner, and walked out of the garage. I wandered the streets for hours, the crisp November air doing little to cool the burning anger within me. I replayed the scene in my head, each word, each gesture, a fresh wound. How could they do this? How could they prioritize their prejudice over family, over the years of support I had given them? Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares plagued me, filled with distorted images of my family, their faces contorted in hatred, their voices echoing with condemnation. I tossed and turned, the injustice of it all a heavy weight on my chest.
I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a suffocating cycle of anger and hurt. I tried to reason with myself, to find some semblance of understanding. Perhaps they were just scared, afraid of what others would think. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. It was pure, unadulterated bigotry, fueled by Liam's manipulation and their own deeply ingrained prejudices. The next morning, I attempted to talk to my mother. I called her, my voice trembling slightly. I tried to explain my feelings, to reason with her, to appeal to the love I thought we shared. She listened in silence, offering no comfort, no words of understanding. When I finished, she simply said, "You know what you need to do, Emma. Until then, we have nothing to say to you." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking. That was it. There was no reaching them. They had made their choice. I tried reaching out to Liam, hoping that perhaps he could be reasoned with. He didn't answer my calls. I sent him a text, pleading with him to reconsider, to see the damage he was causing. His response was a single word: good. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. My own brother, the person I had supported and protected for years, was actively reveling in my pain. The gloves came off. The following weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and frantic planning. I couldn't shake the feeling of injustice, the burning need to make them understand the magnitude of their actions. I started by quietly extracting myself from their financial lives. I stopped paying their bills, canceled the automatic transfers, and redirected the funds to a separate account. I knew this would have consequences, but I didn't care. They had chosen their prejudice over my love, and now they would face the consequences. I started documenting everything, every transaction, every conversation, every instance of their blatant hypocrisy. I meticulously gathered evidence of their financial mismanagement, their frivolous spending, and their reliance on my generosity. I knew that exposing their secrets wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to make them see the error of their ways. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable. They believed that their social standing, their carefully constructed facade of respectability, would protect them from any repercussions. They underestimated my resolve, my ability to fight back. They saw me as the quiet, compliant daughter, the one who would always put their needs first. They were wrong. I knew that their reputation was everything to them. It was the foundation upon which their entire lives were built, and I was about to tear it all down. I started small, subtly dropping hints to mutual acquaintances about their financial struggles. I let slip a few details about their extravagant lifestyle, carefully crafting the narrative to paint them as irresponsible and selfish.
The whispers started, slowly at first, then growing into a chorus of disapproval. I watched with a grim satisfaction as their carefully constructed world began to crumble around them. The phone call started, angry, then pleading. My mother's voice, once cold, was now laced with desperation. My father's threats were empty, hollow. Liam? Silent. They were starting to feel the squeeze. The karma train had left the station. The silence from Liam was the most unnerving. I expected anger, denial, even more taunts, but nothing. It was as if I had ceased to exist. That's when the loneliness truly set in. The holidays, once filled with laughter and warmth, were now a stark reminder of my isolation. I spent Christmas alone in my apartment, the twinkling lights of the tree casting long, dancing shadows on the walls, each one a mocking reminder of the family I had lost. I tried to distract myself, burying myself in work, but the memories kept creeping in, unbidden and unwelcome. The image of their faces, contorted with disdain, haunted my waking hours. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't shake the feeling of being utterly and completely alone. The weight of their betrayal threatened to crush me. I started questioning everything. Was I wrong to expect their acceptance? Was I being selfish in pursuing my own happiness? Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the one who was broken. The doubt gnawed at me, slowly eroding my resolve. I found myself staring into the mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed stranger staring back. I was losing myself in the darkness, allowing their prejudice to consume me. One evening, I sat on my balcony, overlooking the city lights, a glass of wine trembling in my hand. The sounds of laughter and music drifted up from the streets below, a stark contrast to the emptiness that echoed within me. I felt a familiar wave of despair wash over me, the urge to simply give up, to surrender to the darkness. I thought about calling them, begging for their forgiveness, willing to do anything to restore the fragile bond we once shared. But then I remembered their faces, the coldness in their eyes, the venom in their words. I remembered the garage, the cold leftovers, the deafening silence, and the anger surged back, stronger than ever before. My vision blurred, and the glass in my hand shattered, sending shards of glass and crimson wine cascading onto the concrete below. The pain in my hand was sharp, but it was a welcome distraction from the ache in my heart. As I cleaned up the mess, carefully picking up each tiny shard of glass, I realized something. They had broken a wine glass, but they would not break me.
That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my computer, poring over the documents I had gathered, meticulously piecing together the puzzle of their financial deceit. I saw a pattern emerging, a web of lies and manipulations that stretched back years. They hadn't just been irresponsible with money, they had been deliberately deceptive, exploiting my generosity for their own selfish gain. The realization fueled my anger, hardening my resolve. I would not let them get away with it. I would expose their lies, reveal their hypocrisy, and make them face the consequences of their actions, no matter the cost. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The darkness had lifted, replaced by a cold, steely determination. I was no longer the victim. I was the planner. I started researching lawyers, meticulously searching for someone who would understand my situation, someone who wouldn't judge me for wanting to expose my own family. I needed someone ruthless, someone who wasn't afraid to fight dirty. It was then that I stumbled across a name, Miss Evelyn Reed. Her reputation preceded her. They called her the Viper, a lawyer who specialized in high-stakes cases and wasn't afraid to take on anyone, no matter how powerful. I was hesitant at first, intimidated by her fierce reputation, but the more I researched her, the more I realized she was exactly what I needed. I composed an email, carefully outlining my situation, laying out the evidence I had gathered. I held my breath as I hit send, unsure of what to expect. To my surprise, I received a response within hours. She wanted to meet. Stepping into Evelyn Reed's office was like entering another world. The sleek, modern design, the panoramic views of the city, the air of quiet efficiency, it all spoke of power and success. Evelyn herself was even more intimidating in person. Sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. A no-nonsense demeanor that left no room for doubt. I laid out my case, presenting her with the documents I had meticulously compiled. She listened intently, her expression unreadable, occasionally asking pointed questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her gaze unwavering. "This is a messy situation, Miss Emma," she said, her voice cool and measured. "Exposing your own family will be difficult. emotionally and legally. Are you sure you're ready for this? I looked her in the eye, my voice firm. They made their choice, Miss Reed. Now I'm making mine. A ghost of a smile flickered across her lips. Good, she said. Let's get to work.
The Viper lived up to her name. Evelyn's plan was intricate, a multi-pronged attack designed to dismantle their carefully constructed world piece by piece. The first step was gathering irrefutable evidence. While I had already collected a substantial amount, Evelyn insisted on a professional forensic audit of their financial records. She brought in a team of experts who meticulously combed through years of bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts, uncovering a trail of hidden assets and dubious transactions. It turned out they had been siphoning money into offshore accounts, concealing income and evading taxes for years. The forensic team discovered not only the scale of their greed, but also evidence of Liam's involvement, confirming his role in orchestrating their financial shenanigans. He wasn't just jealous, he was an active participant in their deceit. This was more than just a family squabble, it was a full-blown criminal enterprise. The information was sickening. I felt like I was peeling back layers of an onion, only to find more rot. Evelyn explained the legal ramifications, outlining the potential charges they could face: tax evasion, fraud, and conspiracy. The weight of it all was immense, but I was past the point of turning back. Next, Evelyn focused on their public image. She understood that their reputation was their Achilles heel. She hired a private investigator to dig into their past, uncovering any skeletons they might be hiding. It didn't take long to unearth a trove of embarrassing secrets, from past business dealings gone sour to instances of blatant hypocrisy and social climbing. The investigator also uncovered evidence of Liam's manipulative behavior, documenting instances where he had used his charm and connections to exploit others for personal gain. Evelyn then crafted a carefully orchestrated media strategy, leaking carefully chosen tidbits of information to select journalists and bloggers. The goal was to create a slow, steady drip of negative press, eroding their credibility and exposing their true character to the world. She emphasized the importance of remaining anonymous, of letting the evidence speak for itself. My name was to be kept out of it, at least for now. I was just a concerned observer, a silent witness to their downfall. The hardest part was the waiting, the agonizing anticipation of the storm to come. I saw my parents at a charity gala. They looked almost comical, oblivious to the sword hanging over their heads. I wanted to scream, to shout the truth, but I just smiled and walked away. The closer we got to the final strike, the more paranoid I became. I installed security cameras in my apartment, changed my phone number, and avoided public places. I knew they were capable of anything, and I didn't want to take any chances. Evelyn assured me that she had taken precautions to protect me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every phone call, every email, every knock at the door sent a jolt of fear through me. I started having nightmares again, vivid dreams of being hunted, of being trapped in a maze with no escape. The stress was taking its toll, but I refused to let it break me. I channeled my fear into action, focusing on the details of the plan, meticulously reviewing every document, every strategy. I had come too far to back down now. My biggest fear was exposure. One slip-up, one wrong word, and the whole plan could unravel. I knew my family, knew that they would use any means necessary to discredit me, to paint me as the villain. That's why Evelyn insisted on absolute secrecy. Only a handful of people knew the full extent of my plan, and they were all bound by strict confidentiality agreements. The weight of that secret was almost unbearable. The day they tried to truly end me was the day I exposed the truth. It started with a phone call, an anonymous tip to the IRS and several media outlets, providing them with all the evidence Evelyn's team had gathered. The information was irrefutable, the evidence overwhelming. Within hours, the story broke. The headlines screamed of tax evasion, fraud, and corruption. My parents' carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbled overnight. Their friends and colleagues turned their backs on them, their social standing evaporating in an instant. The phone calls to me started immediately. First, anger, then desperation, finally pleading. I let them go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk. The news hit Liam particularly hard. His involvement in the scheme was exposed, his reputation tarnished. He lost his job, his friends, his credibility. He became a pariah, shunned by everyone he knew. I heard he moved out of state,
trying to escape the shame and humiliation. He tried to call, but I immediately blocked the number. That wasn't the end. Evelyn had one last card to play. She had discovered that my parents' charitable foundation, the one they used to cultivate their image as philanthropists, was a sham. They had been using the foundation as a slush fund, diverting donations for their own personal use. Evelyn leaked this information to the authorities, triggering a full-scale investigation. The foundation was shut down, their assets seized, and they were facing even more charges. The irony was delicious. The very thing they used to build their reputation was now the instrument of their destruction. As the dust settled, I watched from afar as their world collapsed around them. They lost everything: their money, their status, their friends, their family.
I felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of remorse, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of the garage, the cold leftovers, the venom in their words. They had made their choice, and so had I. They lost everything. I just smiled. The silence that followed was deafening. The media frenzy eventually died down, the investigations concluded, and my parents and Liam faded from public view, relegated to the shadows of their former lives. I should have felt vindicated, but instead I felt empty. The revenge had been exacted, the scales balanced, but the satisfaction I had craved remained elusive. It was as if I had climbed a mountain only to find a barren wasteland at the summit. Evelyn, ever perceptive, sensed my unease. "It's over, Emma," she said, her voice gentle. "You did what you had to do. Now it's time to move on." But moving on wasn't as easy as she made it sound. The scars of their betrayal ran deep, and the memories continued to haunt me. I tried to focus on my work, on building a new life for myself, but the past was always there, lurking in the shadows, threatening to pull me under. I started seeing a therapist, trying to unpack the years of emotional baggage I had been carrying. It was a slow, painful process, but slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I started forgiving myself for the anger and resentment I had harbored. I realized that holding on to those negative emotions was only hurting me. Forgiveness didn't mean condoning their actions. It meant releasing myself from their grip. One day, while sifting through some old boxes in my apartment, I stumbled upon a forgotten photograph album. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I was ready to confront the past, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the album. The photographs were a bittersweet reminder of happier times, of family vacations, birthday parties, and holiday gatherings. They were pictures of me as a little girl, beaming with joy, surrounded by my parents and Liam. As I flipped through the pages, I noticed something odd. In several of the photos, Liam was subtly positioned in the background, his expression unreadable, his eyes fixed on me. It was as if he was always watching, always observing. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to his actions than simple sibling rivalry. I decided to delve deeper. I hired a cybersecurity expert to analyze Liam's old computer, the one he had used throughout high school and college. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I had a gut feeling that it held some answers. It took weeks, but eventually the expert came back with a report that sent shivers down my spine. He had discovered a hidden folder, password protected and encrypted, containing hundreds of photographs and videos of me. Some were innocent enough, snapshots taken at family events. But others were deeply disturbing, taken without my knowledge or consent, capturing me in private moments, revealing details that no one should have known. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Liam hadn't just been jealous, he had been obsessed. He had been secretly stalking me for years, documenting my every move, invading my privacy in the most insidious way imaginable. The anger surged back, hotter than ever before. I felt violated, betrayed, utterly disgusted. This wasn't just about money or social status. It was about control, about power, about a twisted, deranged desire to possess me. I felt like I needed to scrub my skin raw. I spent hours in the shower. Evelyn was as shocked as I was. "This changes everything, Emma," she said, her voice grim. "This is no longer just about financial fraud. This is about something much darker, much more sinister." She immediately contacted the authorities, providing them with the evidence we had gathered. They launched a criminal investigation, focusing on Liam's online activities and his potential involvement in other similar cases. It turned out that he had been active in online forums dedicated to voyeurism and stalking,
sharing images and videos of me with other like-minded individuals. He was a predator, hiding in plain sight, preying on his own sister. The police obtained a warrant for Liam's arrest, but he had disappeared. He had fled the state, possibly even the country, anticipating the legal consequences of his actions. The manhunt was on, but I knew that he was clever, resourceful, and capable of anything. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching me, waiting for an opportunity to strike. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't rely on the authorities to protect me. I needed to be proactive, to anticipate his next move, to lure him into a trap. I worked with Evelyn and a team of security experts to create a fake online persona, a profile designed to appeal to Liam's twisted desires. We crafted a detailed backstory, filled with vulnerabilities and insecurities, making me the perfect target for his manipulative tendencies. We used social media to spread the bait, posting carefully curated photos and videos, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that would lead him straight to me. It was a dangerous game, but I was willing to risk everything to bring him to justice. The idea was to make him believe I was vulnerable and alone.
Weeks turned into months, and I heard nothing. I started to wonder if I had miscalculated, if Liam had moved on, if he was no longer interested in me. But then, one evening I received an email. It was from an anonymous sender, but I knew instantly that it was him. The language, the tone, the subtle hints, it was unmistakably Liam. He had taken the bait. He started showering me with compliments, offering me support, subtly probing for information about my whereabouts. I played along, feigning interest, revealing just enough to keep him hooked. The online conversations escalated, becoming more intimate, more explicit. He started talking about meeting in person, about wanting to take care of me, about wanting to protect me from the world. My skin crawled. I felt like I was wading through slime. I set the stage. I pretended to be vulnerable and alone, confiding in him about my fears and insecurities. I told him I was planning a weekend getaway to a remote cabin in the mountains, a place where I could escape from the world and find some peace and quiet. It was a lie, of course. The cabin was owned by a private security firm, and it was rigged with cameras and microphones. A team of heavily armed professionals was waiting for him, ready to pounce the moment he arrived. The tension was unbearable. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope. One wrong move, and the whole plan would come crashing down. I knew that Liam was unpredictable, that he could change his mind at any moment. I had to be careful, to maintain the facade, to keep him engaged. The day before the planned meeting, he sent me a message. "I can't wait to see you, Emma," he wrote. "I've been waiting for this for a long time." My heart pounded in my chest. I was about to come face to face with the man who had violated my privacy, who had tormented me for years, who had turned my life into a living hell. I spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I kept replaying the plan in my head, going over every detail, anticipating every possible scenario. I knew that this was my chance, my opportunity to finally confront him, to make him pay for what he had done. But I was also terrified. I knew that he was dangerous, that he was capable of anything. I was walking into a trap, but so was he. The day had come. I drove to the cabin. The sky was overcast and a cold wind was blowing through the trees. It was the perfect setting for a showdown. I parked the car and walked towards the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the door and took a deep breath. This was it. As I turned the knob and stepped inside, I heard a voice behind me. "Hello, Emma."
"Hello, Emma." The voice was chillingly familiar. I turned slowly, my hand instinctively reaching for the small taser I had concealed in my purse. Liam stood a few feet away, his eyes gleaming with a disturbing mix of obsession and triumph. He hadn't changed much, but there was a hardness in his features, a desperation that I hadn't seen before. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice a low, menacing whisper. "I knew you couldn't resist me." My vision blurred. The years of fear and anger coalesced into a single burning point of rage. I lunged, the taser singing as it connected with his chest. He gasped, his body convulsing as he fell to the ground. The security team swarmed him instantly, pinning him down, cuffing his hands behind his back. He struggled, screaming obscenities, but it was no use. He was caught. I stood over him, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The look on his face was a mixture of shock, betrayal, and pure, unadulterated hatred. He spat at me. It landed on my cheek. I didn't flinch. The police arrived moments later, taking Liam into custody. As they led him away, he turned to me, his eyes filled with venom. "You'll regret this, Emma," he snarled. "You haven't heard the last of me." I just stared back at him, my face expressionless. He was wrong. I already had. The trial was a media circus. The evidence against Liam was overwhelming. The photographs, the videos, the online communications, it all painted a damning picture of a man consumed by obsession and a thirst for control. He tried to deny it, to claim that I had fabricated the evidence, but it was no use. The jury saw through his lies. He was found guilty on all counts: stalking, harassment, and violation of privacy. The judge sentenced him to the maximum penalty allowed by law: years in prison, a lifetime of shame and disgrace. As the verdict was read, I watched Liam's face crumble. The arrogance, the smugness, the sense of superiority, it all vanished, replaced by a look of utter despair. He knew that his life was over. He had lost everything. The aftermath was a blur. The media attention intensified, but I refused to give any more interviews. I wanted to put it all behind me, to move on with my life. I changed my name, moved to a different city, and started a new career. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and focused on building a future free from fear and resentment. It wasn't easy. The scars of the past ran deep, and there were times when I felt like I was drowning in memories. But I refused to let them define me. I had survived. I had triumphed. I had found my own version of peace.
Years later, I received a letter. It was from Liam. He was in prison, serving his sentence. He wrote about his regret, his remorse, his deep shame for what he had done. He claimed that he was a changed man, that he had finally come to terms with his actions. He asked for my forgiveness. I read the letter with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I didn't know if I believed him. Maybe he was truly sorry. Maybe he was just trying to manipulate me again. It didn't matter. His words held no power over me anymore. I had moved on. I had healed. I had found my own closure. I crumpled the letter and tossed it into the fire. As I watched it burn, I felt a sense of finality, a sense of release. It was over. The past was gone. I was free. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.